Hello, everyone, and welcome to Immaculate Conception Parish here in Chicago. Many of you know me, but for those who don't, I'm Father Matt, and this series of videos is based on questions that our kids have sent in to me from our school. We've allowed them to ask a question on any subject, any topic, and even just today, I've received 100 more questions from them. So trust me, there's lots and lots of questions all over here just waiting to be answered. This particular question comes into us today from a number of 5th graders and some 6th, 7th, and 8th graders as well, who are asking, how do we know that December 25th really is Jesus' birthday? So, without further ado, let's jump right into the question. Before we go forward with the topic, I want to give 2 notes. The first is that when I refer to times, I'll be using AD and BC. Nowadays, many textbooks use CE and BCE to refer to dates and times. But originally, we used AD and BC. AD meaning Anno Domini, the year of the Lord, and BC meaning before Christ. CE, as you know, is the Common Era, and BCE is before the Common Era. While many people have different reasons for using AD or CE or BC or BCE, I think it all comes down to preference in the end. After all the dates will be the same. So even though some may call it the Common Era, the numbers that we use for the years are exactly the same. Next, whenever I quote scripture, I'll be doing so in the usual way, with the book first, then the chapter number, then the verse, as you'll see on the screen here. Our question for today is about how do we know December 25th is really Jesus' birthday? The first step when confronted with any question of faith is to ask, how do I get the right answer? Or at least, how do I get the best possible answer that I can find? A lot of people have a lot of different theories and ways, but the best possible route is to look at the possibilities, eliminate weaker arguments, and take strong arguments seriously. If we do this, we can be more confident about what we believe and why we believe it. So let's look at the 3 arguments that I think best represent the December 25th question. The first argument says, December 25th was stolen or adapted from pagan traditions and cultures. The second argument says, if God is perfect, then all his plans and actions are perfect. Every small action, detail, and event has deep meaning. The third argument says, we have clues from Scripture about times, so how did the earliest Christian communities celebrate the birth of Christ? Each of these arguments have people who believe in them and don't believe in them. Let's look at each one seriously, but in the end, I think that there's enough evidence to suggest that December 25th may in fact be Jesus' real birthday. The first argument deals with the premise that Christians stole December 25th from pagan culture, primarily the Romans. The Roman Empire celebrated a feast day known as Sol Invictus, which is called the Unconquered Sun, on December 25th. It should be noted, however, that this feast day did not take place in the Roman Empire until 274 AD. Needless to say, it leaves us a lot of time to try and see if Christians celebrated December 25th before 274 AD. It's also worth noting that many people believe this theory. This theory has gained popularity over the years because of Christian practices in the past. It is true that many of the things that we use to celebrate Christmas actually come from other cultures that were adapted. As you know, Christianity started in the Middle East and in Rome, and then spread throughout the world, adapting and working with many other cultures. For example, the Christmas tree was not originally Christian. It came from Germanic pagan tribes that worshiped trees. Christianity, during its time of spreading throughout the world, confronted many cultures, some that were hostile, others that were friendly to the message of Christianity. Many Christians, deciding not to destroy the cultures that they entered into, rather decided to adapt the cultures that they were in. This is why many people today believe that everything in Christianity is simply taken from other cultures. While it is certainly true that some things, and especially on specific holidays, they're taken from other cultures, it does not mean that everything is taken from something else. Scholars, even as recent as 2015 and 2017, have begun to challenge these notions. For too long, many people have simply assumed that things in Christianity came about because of political purposes or for people wanting power or influence or control over other people, when that's not necessarily the case. It can also be the case that December 25th genuinely came about from religious communities venerating the birth of Christ. One last note that's worth mentioning is that for the first 300 years of Christianity, it was illegal in the Roman Empire. Many believers, whether they were Gentile or Jew before becoming Christian, suffered greatly at the hands of the Romans. Many early Christian communities actively tried not to celebrate the birth of Christ. It was a Roman practice to celebrate the birthday of the gods, and many early Christian communities didn't want to do anything that looked even remotely close to Roman practices. This way of thinking lost out in the end, though, as we will begin to see many early Christian communities begin to celebrate the birth of Christ. The second argument is perhaps a little bit easier to explain. This way of thinking was especially popular in early Christianity and in medieval times, although we do see it come up again and again even to our own day. The simplified version of the argument is this: that because God is perfect, and He does all things perfectly, it must mean that all the details involved in any given action have great meaning and significance. The people who were there, the time of year it occurred, the weather that was there, even the animals that were nearby, all of it must have some deep and significant meaning to those willing to look for it and find it. I think anyone can appreciate why this way would be popular. Think about how we do anything. Certain plants, certain birds, certain colors, certain times of year, certain types of weather, all of these things mean something to someone else. Many people even feel that in experiencing those things, it must mean something directly for them. Perhaps you even have a friend or loved one who sees coincidences in everything. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this way of thinking, because some people think in an artistic way, in a poetic way. But at the same time, we shouldn't assume that every detail has the meaning that we want it to mean. There's always a danger in making things into what we want them to be. For example, take John the Baptist and Jesus, his cousin. Many people believe that the birth of these two at certain times of the year was an indication of what each would be. The birth of John the Baptist is traditionally celebrated on June 24th, which is the summer solstice, the time of year when the days gradually start getting shorter and shorter. On the other hand, Jesus is born after the winter solstice, December 25th, when the days start getting longer and longer. Early Christians saw this as an indication of what John the Baptist would later say himself after he identified Jesus as Lord, when he said, "He must increase and I must decrease." Early Christians took the time of year that they were born to be an indication of what each would become. John the Baptist, a prophet who would announce the Lord, and Jesus, who is the light of the world. We have one problem, however. These are all nice things to say, but none of it proves that Jesus was born on December 25th. So we need a better way of figuring it out. And I think the third way has the best argument. The first two arguments both have elements of truth to them, but the first argument has a nearly 300-year gap where we can look for an alternative. And the second argument relies on convenience, meaning that it relies on things fitting together all too perfectly in order for it to be true. And so the third argument allows us another way to assess the problem. The foundation of the third argument lies in tradition. Because Scripture never comes out and says Jesus was born on December 25th, we have to rely on the earliest Christian communities and their example. One of the earliest Christian writers who wrote about December 25th was Julius Africanus, who lived from about 160 AD to 240 AD, meaning that if you take the halfway point of his life, it was around 200 AD that he wrote about December 25th. We also have fragments of Hippolytus of Rome, who lived from 170 AD to 236 AD, roughly, who was a student of Saint Irenaeus of Lyon, who himself was a student of Saint Polycarp, who himself was a student of Saint John the Apostle. Saint Polycarp and Irenaeus were both martyred for their faith, and Saint John the Apostle is said to have lived until at least 105 AD. Saying a bunch of names is not the same thing as having a proof, but it does provide us a groundwork to say that something was there, that something was being handed on, that something was part of early Christian communities. This third argument has weaknesses, to be sure, but it stands upon three pillars that I hope will help build our confidence in the answer. The first pillar takes a look at scriptural references to time. The second pillar looks at Jewish feast days and the calendar associated with them. And the third deals with the life and death of King Herod, who ordered Jesus and all the newborn males to be killed after his birth. This next part might seem a bit complicated, so try to keep up. We start with the father of John the Baptist, which is Zechariah, who was assigned to execute his priestly duties during the course of Abijah. Jewish calendars, when we calculate backwards in time, put Zechariah serving on this day, which also falls in line when King Herod ruled over Judea. It then says Mary in the 6th month was visited by the angel Gabriel. Shortly after her fiat and conception, she went to visit Elizabeth. And, as we all know, 9 months from March is December. And so if we trace everything back from Zechariah and all the clues we have historically from that, we end up with about the time of December 25th. There are a lot of details that I left out of here, but I'll tell you why I think this one makes the most sense. In regards to the second argument, it would make more sense if John the Baptist and Jesus were born on September 21st and December 21st to match perfectly with the winter and summer solstice, but they don't. They're on seemingly weird dates off of the solstice, like June 24th and June 25th. And secondly, against the first argument, many early Christian communities were celebrating this long before the Saturnalia or Sol Invictus festivals, which themselves were celebrated around the winter solstice, usually December 17th to the 23rd. So when we put all three of those things together, namely scripture, tradition, and historical clues from things that happened around that time, I think we can come to a fairly confident answer that December 25th is Jesus' real birthday. I hope that explanation was somewhat useful to all of you. As I mentioned in the video, I left out a ton of details. Not only reading a big thing like this with a lot of notes on Christmas and all the scholarship that's been going on into it, but I always hate leaving information out, where if I left everything in, this video probably would have been 30-40 minutes long, maybe even an hour long. So I hate leaving out stuff. So if you have additional questions about this topic, feel free to leave them on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel where this video is. I'm always happy to answer these questions as best I can. I appreciate you being patient with me as I try my best to edit and to record and to do everything, which I know I'm not that great at. But I do appreciate the positive responses we got from the first video. So if you like this video, be sure to like it. You can subscribe to our channel, or I'll be letting you know when I'll do the next one. And again, I'm so very happy that you came to watch this video today. Be well, have a blessed Christmas, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.